So up until now we have learned how to make a get request, get the response and convert that into our Swift structs. So in this video we will learn how to make a post request. In post request we basically send some information to the server, which means we want to save that information. Requests are mainly used when we are about to submit a form, like when we register on a website as a user, or when we log in, or in general when we submit a form for a feedback on some websites. So all those are basically post requests. So post requests have two parts. One is making the request and second is sending the body is basically the information that we send to the user, that the server will work on. Basically it can save it or process it or do certain operations on that information. So the same website has given us a dummy or a fake post request called create. This post request basically will create a user. So in the body we will send the name and the job, and then we will get a response back with the status code as 201, and in the response we will get the user that we created with the same name and the job and an ID assigned to that user, and created at when that user was created. So I will show you how basically body works. So I'll show you it in Postman. So this is the same request, but instead it is post. So previously it was a get request. So if we made a get request, we got this information. But in post, the URL is the same, but because the way of calling them, get versus post, has changed. So it will be a different URL that it will hit. So right now here in Postman there is this tab called body, where we will send the body of the post request, and whatever we send it will create the user. So instead of the same one that this website is using, I will create a new one. We will name it Henry, and the job will be engineer, and we will send the request. So when the request is successful, it will create the user and return us the response. Basically the same name and job, but now an ID has been assigned, so it will assign the ID and create it at. So if we do John manager and then make a send request, it will basically return us that in the response of that request. So how we will do that? We will start with the blank slate here. So we just have that method and the URL right now, and then the first thing that we will need to do here is that we will need to create a request. So in the previous video you saw that when we made a URL session object and called the data task, we had these two different methods, one that took a URL and another one that took URL request. So this time we will be using the URL request, and this request will have the information whether it's a get request or a post request. In the previous video we didn't needed it, because all requests by default are get requests until we define them that it is a post or a put or a delete one. So here, because the type of request is changing from get to post, we need to create a request, and this body will have this request will have the body in it, right? So what we will do is we will create the request. So it will be of type URL request, and this request will take the URL for us, right? So we will pass URL here. Now we will define what kind of request it is. Basically it is a post request. So on this object we have a property named http method, and we will tell it that it is a post request. Now third part is that we have to attach a body, right? So this request has another property called http body, and the you can see that the body is of type data. Sorry. So this body is of type data, and now how basically we will attach the body is usually the most common form is it's a combination of keys and values. Similarly, how we got the response that had keys and values, the body is also key, like name is John, job is engineer, right? So we will have to create that kind of body, and Swift provides us a data structure that has keys and values in it, which is a dictionary. So what we will do is we'll create a body dictionary, and here we will provide the key of the name as Henry and job as junior engineer. So I'm providing a different job, so you can see that when we will make this request, in the response back we will get junior engineer as the response. But now this is a dictionary, this is not a data object, it's not a data type. So how do we convert this dictionary into the data type is, because this API is taking the JSON type as its body. It's giving JSON as the response and it's taking JSON as the body. So Swift provides us a class known as Json Serialization, which will uh, help us convert a dictionary object into a data object, and put it and help us send that data to the backend, to the server as the JSON body. So we will use JSON serialization dot data, and it says with JSON object. With JSON object means that it's a key value pair object, which is this dictionary in this situation. And for options, we can ignore this right now. We just need to send an empty array here. We don't need to provide any options. It's a very simple request. For making complicated requests, we would need to provide some sort of options which we will discuss in some future videos. So you can see that this is also throwing an error. So when it says that this call can throw you, we should use try. So it means that we should use the try here, and we will use the same way that we will use do catch. We will use the try in a do catch. So for ease of reading, what we will do is we will put this whole code block in a do catch and use try here, and then let error, and we will just print the description of the error here. Now we will tell the server that the content type that we are sending in the request is also of JSON. So a request usually has multiple parts. So one is the URL that we are hitting, second is the body, that what information we are hitting, what information we are sending, and third one is headers. Headers is some extra information about the data that we are sending or the data that we want to receive. So in the request we will also attach the headers here, and it provides us a method to attach the headers, which is known as set value. First we will provide the value, which will be application JSON. For what HTTP header field, there are some certain number of header fields in an HTTP request. One of them is content type. So whenever we are sending the JSON information in the request, we have to set content type header as application JSON. So now we have our request ready, we have our body ready. Only thing that is now left is making the request, basically the actual making the call to the API. So that will be done using URL sessions class. So we will use the URL sessions class, shared data task with request, and we will do all this stuff here. And I'll just copy paste the basic error handling code and the data handling code here. It is same what we did in the previous video, and I will provide the link to the code for this video in the description below. Now what we will do is, now we have made the request, we have called the request. Now once we receive the information back here, we will convert that response that we received into one of the structs, right? But here, as we are not doing anything, we don't want to show it anywhere, I'll just convert this response that we receive back into a string, so we don't need to create a model or do the whole JSON decoder thing. But in a real application, you will basically want to do that. So what we will do is, we have the data right now, so we will simply print it. And don't forget to call resume here. So let's try. So you can see here, it's an optional, we can unwrap it. You shouldn't unwrap an optional, you should always use guardlet or iflet. But here, as we know, we are sure that this will work. And it's a small tutorial, it's not a real world application where sometimes the server could stop working. I know right now the server is working, so I can explicitly unwrap it, right? So let's run again, and you can see that we are getting the JSON string where job is junior engineer and name is Henry and ID is 118. If we change it to John, the job and the ID and created at will change. So junior engineer John and ID is something different here. So this is how you make a post request. I will go through the basics once again. That a post request has basically three parts to it. One is the body, one is the URL that we are hitting with the type, and third one is the header. So first, basically we prepare the URL, then we prepare the body, then we prepare the request where we set the HTTP method, and then we assign the body to the request, and then also we set the header in that request. So these are the basic components of making a post request here. That's all in this video. Probably in next video we will learn how to create a delete request, and then we will learn how to create a put request. Thank you very much. I hope you will like this video, and please keep watching, keep an eye on my channel. I'm gonna put a lot of content for iOS, for backend server development, especially for iOS developers who are dependent on Firebase quite a lot. So now you will be able to learn backend development as well through my channel. Thank you very much.